You ever walk into a room and forget why you came in? Or start a sentence and lose the thread halfway through? Or maybe you've noticed something else. Mornings that used to start with energy, a certain fullness, a pulse of confidence, now feel quiet. Flat. Like your body's on mute. And you tell yourself, it's just age, right? But what if it's not? What if the real reason your mind feels fuzzy and your manhood feels distant, it's not age at all but circulation? I've spent over 30 years walking alongside men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s. And I can tell you this with quiet certainty, when blood stops moving freely, the first things to go quiet are your mind and your manhood. That's not a weakness. That's not failure. That's a signal. A message from your body saying, I'm still here, but I need help getting where I'm supposed to go. I'm Dr. Catherine Rocker. And I've seen what happens when circulation fades slowly, silently leaving men disconnected not just from their strength, but from their thoughts, their memories, their presence in a room. But I've also seen what happens when the blood returns. When the flow is restored. When a man looks in the mirror and sees himself again clear-eyed, steady, and grounded in his power. So let me ask you, what if just one change to your eating habits, how you move, how you wind down before bed, could send blood back to where it matters most? To your brain. To your core. To your life. Stay with me because in the next few minutes, I'll walk you through the small but powerful habits that help reawaken the very parts of you that once felt unreachable. And it starts by understanding one simple truth: if blood doesn't move, neither do you. Let's talk about what that means next. It often starts so quietly that most men don't even notice. You walk into the kitchen and forget why. You reread the same line in the newspaper 3 times. You reach for a name, a place, a thought, and it slips away like smoke. At first, you laugh it off. Just getting older, you say. But then something else changes. You wake up and there's nothing, not the weight, not the pulse, not the sense of readiness you once took for granted. Mornings feel empty. Evenings feel dull. And you start to wonder, quietly, painfully, is this just what being 60 means now? But here's what I need you to hear, clearly and gently. These are not just quirks of age. They are signals, clear, biological messages from your body telling you something is changing beneath the surface. And most often, that something is blood flow. When circulation to the brain slows, your memory falters, your clarity fades, and your mood drifts into a kind of soft fog you can't quite shake. And when circulation to your pelvis slows, your arousal dulls, your confidence wanes, and your connection to your partner, to yourself begins to dim. It's not your fault. It's not a moral failing. It's physiology. And it has a name: endothelial dysfunction. That's a clinical way of saying that the inner lining of your blood vessels, the endothelium, has stopped doing its job. When it's healthy, this lining produces nitric oxide, a vital molecule that tells your blood vessels to relax and open, letting blood flow freely where it's needed most. But after 60, with the wear and tear of life stress, inflammation, processed foods, and long hours sitting still, your endothelium stiffens, and nitric oxide production drops. That means less blood reaches your brain, less blood reaches your pelvis, and the systems that rely on that flow, your memory, your intimacy, your identity as a man, start to slow down with it. This is why you can feel physically fine in one moment, yet deeply unsteady in the next. It's why some men say, I still love my wife, but I don't feel like I can show it anymore. And it's why others feel like strangers in their bodies, as if they've been pushed back behind a curtain of fog and silence. But I want you to know this: just because something has gone quiet doesn't mean it's gone forever. Blood flow can return. The endothelium can be restored. Your system is not broken, it's simply waiting for the right signal. And that signal doesn't have to come from a prescription bottle. It can come from your plate, from your breath, from your movement, from your rhythm. And if you still feel skeptical, that's okay. Because I want to show you something real, a story of one man who thought it was too late, too far gone, until something small brought him back. Let me introduce you to Daniel. Daniel was 70 years old when he walked into my office, a retired high school teacher from a small town in Oregon, the kind of man who had once stood tall in front of classrooms, commanding attention with his calm voice and steady presence, but now sat across from me with his shoulders slightly slumped and his eyes searching for words he wasn't sure how to say. He didn't come in for pills, and he wasn't chasing some miracle cure. He simply wanted to understand why everything he once took for granted was slowly slipping through his fingers, not with pain or noise, but with silence. He spoke gently, as if afraid of the sound of his truth. I forget where I put things, he said, but it's more than that. I forget what I was about to say, sometimes even in the middle of a sentence. And it's not just my mind, I don't feel much down there anymore. Not in the morning. Not with my wife. It's like something's gone quiet, but I can't explain what exactly it is. That's the moment I knew he didn't need treatment, he needed a return. Not to youth, but to vitality. Not to performance, but to presence. I asked him about his evenings. He told me he usually sat in his chair after dinner, scrolled through the news, maybe watched some baseball if it was on, then went to bed. He didn't move much after sunset. He skipped meals if he wasn't hungry. And he hadn't thought much about how blood reaches the brain or the body. We started small. No prescriptions, no devices, just a ritual. 5 minutes each morning to release the tension in his neck and upper shoulders, where major blood vessels feed the brain and nerves travel to the rest of the body. 2 tablespoons of pomegranate seeds added to his breakfast, rich in polyphenols that support nitric oxide and blood vessel health. And a short, quiet walk after dinner, just 8 minutes around the block, to signal to his system that movement still matters, even in the dark. He didn't call me for 2 weeks. But on day 16, I received an email. The subject line was, "I'm starting to feel something." He told me he'd noticed his thoughts were coming more easily, that he didn't feel as foggy in the mornings, and that he'd woken up just once with that old familiar fullness. His words weren't clinical, and they weren't dramatic. They were simple. Grounded. Real. He wrote, "My wife said I smiled at her like I used to, and I hadn't realized how long it had been since I did that. That, to me, is everything." Not because he regained some lost function, but because he reconnected. With his breath. With his memory. With the part of him that had been waiting, quietly, for the flow to return. Daniel didn't just restore circulation. He reclaimed something sacred, the quiet confidence of a man who knows he's still alive in every sense of the word. And the best part? What worked for him wasn't complicated. It wasn't expensive. And it can begin tonight, right where you are. Next, I'll show you exactly what Daniel did step by step so you can begin turning your own blood into a message. I'm back. What brought Daniel back wasn't magic, and it wasn't medication, it was a quiet commitment to small, repeated signals sent to his own body. The truth is, you don't need to do everything, you just need to do the right thing, at the right time, with intention. For Daniel, 3 habits made all the difference, simple, grounded, and entirely natural. The first was what we called the neck release ritual, a 5-minute morning practice that gently stimulates blood flow to the brain and relaxes the tense muscles around the carotid arteries. Each morning, just after waking, Daniel would sit upright, place 2 fingers behind each ear, and slowly trace downward along his neck, following his breath. Then he'd move his fingertips in small circles around the base of his skull and gently massage the space where his shoulders meet his neck. This may sound too simple to matter, but it's not. Those vessels and nerves are highways for oxygen, memory, and energy. When they're stiff, your thoughts fog. When they're open, you feel alert, steady, and strong. And as a quiet bonus, stimulating this area also helps relax the nervous system, lowering blood pressure and increasing parasympathetic tone, which is essential for intimacy. The second was food, more specifically, pomegranate seeds. Just 2 tablespoons each morning. Daniel mixed them into Greek yogurt, but you can eat them fresh, chilled, or even freeze-dried. Pomegranate isn't just a fruit, it's a natural vasodilator, rich in antioxidants and polyphenols that enhance nitric oxide production. That means it helps your blood vessels open both in the brain and below the waist. It doesn't spike blood sugar, and it carries compounds that reduce plaque formation along the endothelium. Daniel called it his circulation candy, because after about a week, he started noticing a warmth returning to his hands, his face, and quietly elsewhere too. The third was movement. After dinner, he'd take a slow, quiet 8-minute walk around his block. Nothing intense. No sweating. Just movement. That short evening walk told his blood, "We're not done for the day." It helped regulate blood sugar, stimulate dopamine release, and prevent the pooling of blood in the lower limbs. More importantly, it kept his system in flow so that when he lay down to rest, his vessels were already soft, his heart already open, his brain already primed for recovery. None of this was revolutionary. But together, it created momentum. His brain began to clear. His connection deepened. His confidence quietly returned. It's important to know, these aren't tricks. They're restorative acts and habits that invite your system to remember what it already knows how to do. And they can begin tonight. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent. One moment of presence. One bowl. One breath. One walk. And if you stay with it, something remarkable begins to happen. Not just in how you think. Not just in how you feel. But in how you show up in the world again fully, clearly, and confidently. In the next part, I'll walk you through what Daniel and so many others began to notice after 7, 14, and 30 days of this small practice. Because of the effects? They're not just physical. They're transformational. Most of the men I've walked with on this path don't notice a lightning bolt. There's no dramatic moment. No instant transformation. What they feel instead is something far more profound, a slow, steady return to presence. After 7 days, Daniel told me something surprising. He said, "I'm not forgetting as much," and then he paused and added, "But more than that. I'm not frustrated with myself like I was." The morning neck release was clearing not just his vessels, but also the emotional static that comes with not feeling sharp. His thoughts moved with less effort. He didn't search for words as much. And his sleep deepened because his body was no longer wrestling tension through the night. Some mornings, he would wake up feeling a quiet strength in his legs, a stillness in his chest, and a warmth in his hands that hadn't been there for years. By day 14, something else had shifted. He said, "My wife made a joke at breakfast, and I laughed, really laughed, and it surprised us both." That moment may sound small, but it spoke volumes. It meant dopamine was flowing. It meant his nervous system was softening. And it meant blood was reaching the parts of his brain and body that carry joy, arousal, and attention. His evening walks became his favorite part of the day, not because of the exercise, but because of what he felt afterward, relaxed, grounded, and quietly confident. And one morning, he added, "I woke up with a feeling I haven't had in a long time. Let's just say, I didn't have to check if things were working. I knew." Then came day 30, and that's when Daniel looked me in the eye and said, "I feel like I've returned. Not to being young, but to being in my life again." He wasn't chasing old versions of himself. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He was simply moving through the world with the kind of presence that makes a man feel rooted, calm, and connected to himself, to his thoughts, and to the one who shares his bed. These effects weren't a gift from some new supplement or some latest trend. They were the natural response of a body being given what it needs to heal: circulation, breath, movement, and consistency. When blood moves, your systems light up. When your brain receives oxygen, your memory holds. When your pelvis receives flow, your manhood remembers. And when you receive results, you no longer wonder if it's too late. You know you were never gone. You were just waiting for the current to return. Next, I'll speak from the heart about what this all really means. Because you didn't lose your strength. You didn't lose your manhood. You just lost the signal. And now, it's coming back. There is something every man over 60 deserves to hear, not once, not as a consolation, but as a truth that anchors deep into the bones. You have not lost your manhood. You have not lost your strength, your fire, your presence. What you may have lost quietly, without warning, is blood flow. And with it, the signals that once made you feel fully alive. See, your manhood was never a number on a chart. It was never defined by age, or performance, or hormone levels. It was defined by presence, the way you looked into someone's eyes, the way you moved through a room with calm steadiness, the way you connected to your own body without fear or shame. That never left you. It only went quiet. It only softened when your vessels began to narrow, when your endothelium grew tired, when your nights grew still but your blood stopped delivering the life force to the places that needed it most. And now, you know what caused it. And more importantly, you know what can bring it back. You are not a machine that broke. You are a living system waiting for the right signal, the right breath, the right walk, the right bowl of food, the right moment of intention to wake up again. When circulation is restored, you don't just perform, you return. You become present, sharp, steady, and sensual again. You begin to recognize yourself not through some old reflection, but through how you feel inside your own skin, clear-headed, grounded, rooted in your worth. That's what Daniel found. That's what so many other men are quietly reclaiming. And that is exactly what is waiting for you, too. This isn't about chasing youth. It's about honoring life. It's about restoring the rhythm of your own biology so you can live, love, and lead from a place that is real again. You didn't lose it. You just stopped feeding it. Now, you can begin again. And in just a moment, I'll share one final thought, an invitation, really, if you feel that your time has come to return. If this message reached you, truly reached you, not just in the mind, but in the quiet corners of your chest where old doubt has lived, then I want you to pause and take a breath. Not because this is the end, but because something in you has already begun to shift. You listened. You stayed. You remembered. And that means something. You're not alone in this. There are thousands, millions of men who sit in silence every night, wondering where their strength went, why their body changed, and whether it's too late to feel connected again. Many of them won't speak. They won't ask. They won't admit the ache they carry. But you listened today. And that makes you a bridge for someone else. So if you felt even one moment in this video stir something inside you, drop a comment below and simply say, I'm ready. No need to explain. No need to justify. Just let that one sentence be the first signal to your body and your life that you're choosing to return. And if there's a man you care about, a friend, a brother, a father, a neighbor who's been fading quietly in the background, share this with him. Not as a warning, but as a gift. Because maybe he doesn't need advice. Maybe he just needs to hear another man say, you still matter. This is how we heal. One man remembering, one friend reaching out, one choice made before bed, again and again, until life flows back in like it never left. Thank you for staying. Thank you for choosing not to disappear. And most of all, thank you for letting me walk with you, even if just for these few minutes. I'll be here when you're ready for the next step. Because your story is far from over. Dr. Catherine Rocker.